Hello, geography. So by now you should have finished reading chapter 13, section 1 out of the textbook, and you should have finished that Rise of Feudalism assignment. So really what I want to do in this video is just take a couple minutes to touch on some of the main historical themes from that period, this early medieval period that first reading in the textbook described. So the first major one, this one kind of permeates throughout the entire early medieval period, is this notion of decentralization, as effectively the once unified and bonded together Western Roman Empire slowly fracturing apart from this unified, big, strong empire ruled by a central authority into a bunch of smaller, more locally focused kingdoms with their own unique cultural attributes, focusing again predominantly on local and community focus, not on big national stuff, for lack of a better term. And there are a number of examples of decentralization that we see in this period. So, for example, you have the breakdown of large national systems of government, and in their place, you have smaller kingdoms or more localized systems of government rise up to replace them. You have a breakdown in unifying cultural characteristics like language, for example, and you have the breakdown of the Roman emphasis on Latin and education falling away with the development of different languages over time, and with a general decline in education and particularly literacy, as fewer and fewer people were able to read or write. You had a breaking apart of economic relationships as well, as the economy kind of started to shift away from this prosperous trade and commerce based economy that the Romans had to a more agricultural economy. And really, not even just agriculture, really focusing more on subsistence agriculture, where local areas would focus on producing everything that they would need for themselves, and they wouldn't really produce extra. They would focus on only making what they would need. So as a result, there really wasn't that much trade or commerce going on because, one, nobody really had extra stuff to trade with, and two, nobody really had the luxury goods to trade for. So again, commerce, trade, all that stuff kind of breaks down, and these trade networks that once bound Western Europe together kind of fall apart, and Western Europe kind of devolves into a series of more self-sufficient communities that aren't really interacting with each other all that much, except through war. You also have the trend of deurbanization, where you have people leaving the cities, moving away from the cities to the countryside. So these are all these examples of decentralization. Again, you've got the political decentralization with national governments falling away to be replaced with local governments. You have cultural decentralization, where that unifying culture of Rome breaking away into smaller, more localized cultures. You have deurbanization. You have a breakdown of trade networks. All in all, you have this general trend or theme of decentralization during this early medieval period, stretching from roughly 500 to roughly 800. So a significant part of the medieval period. Within this period, though, there are a couple of major trends to pay attention to in addition to decentralization. One, you see the persistence and the continued spread of Christianity throughout or beyond the boundaries of the Roman Empire. So the Catholic Church was the only major institution of the Roman Empire that survived the fall of Rome, and as a result, the Catholic Church was a really significant cultural and, as we'll kind of see later, political force as well. But the Catholic Church managed to continue and extend its reach by continuing to spread Christianity beyond the boundaries of Rome. Uh, Really, one of the most significant figures in that regard is Clovis, who was king of the Franks, ruler of most of what is present day France. And Clovis is significant because he's the first Germanic king to convert to Christianity. So this signifies the spread of Christianity into the Germanic kingdoms and amongst the Germanic people. And also, Clovis starts to unify a lot of these smaller Germanic tribes into larger kingdoms. Notably, he unified all the Frankish tribes into one kingdom in present-day France, known as the Frankish Kingdom. So Clovis, you start to see a bit of not a true halting of that trend of decentralization, as it doesn't bring back the overarching national system of government that the Romans had, but you start to see some degree of unification taking place later on in the period under Clovis, both through religion and also through politics. You also see the church's development as a political power, best symbolized by Pope Gregory I, who radically expands the political powers of the papacy and began asserting the Pope that the Pope had secular authority over the kings and rulers of these Germanic kingdoms throughout Western Europe. So Gregory I really kind of represents how the church was becoming more of a political entity in addition to being a religious institution as well. And the church is able to successfully protect its power by limiting the spread of other religions into the area, most significantly represented by Charles Martel's victory over the Muslims in the Battle of Tours. By winning the Battle of Tours, Charles Martel effectively halted the spread of Islam into Western Europe, which effectively preserved the region as a major sphere of influence for Christianity, and in particular for the Catholic Church, and preserving the power of the Catholic Church as well, and preventing Europe's complete incorporation into the Islamic Caliphate, which we had just talked about with our unit over religion. You also have some attempts by individuals to provide some order and stability, and to try and revive the glory of the Roman Empire. Notably, most significantly in this regard, you have the figure of Charlemagne, who establishes the Holy Roman Empire in roughly around the year 800 with the approval of the Church and the Pope. But what's also really significant about the Holy Roman Empire is that despite the impressive sounding name, there's a kind of a running joke within the historical community that the Holy Roman Empire was none of the above. It wasn't holy because it wasn't, it had the endorsement of the church, but other than that, it didn't really coordinate with the church all that often. It didn't really have the spread of Christianity as one of its major goals. It wasn't Roman because, it was not located in Rome or Italy. It was located in predominantly France and Germany. And it wasn't really an empire because it wasn't this massive, expansive territory ruling over all these different groups of people. No, the Holy Roman Empire really was only a union of Germanic tribes. And the central authority within the region, while stronger than it had previously been, was still not all that impressive. And it really didn't continue after Charlemagne's death. Charlemagne was able to become a more of a unifying monarch just because of his political skill and his charisma as a leader. But after his death, that structure really fell apart and devolved into the system that we now know that we refer to now as feudalism, which we'll look at a bit more later on. So this is just kind of my big takeaways from that reading and some of the major trends that I think are significant to pay attention to if you look at the early medieval period. But the bulk of our look at the Middle Ages is going to focus what happens after Charlemagne's death, as once again you have this decentralization into the system of feudalism, which should be really interesting to pay attention. Well, I think it's really interesting, and we'll look at that more in depth as we look more at this unit. So have a good day, guys, and I will see you later.